so much for joining book club today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get ready to hear from some doulas who know squat.
All right. So starting with chapter 9. What do y'all think of this section? A lot of just a lot of information, a lot of very prescriptive stuff on step by step what to do. And chapter 9 is all about what to expect. So we get a lot of ideas about what kind of things can influence how much milk they're going to produce. I have highlighted here in Western countries, those who induce lactation produce 25% to 75% of their baby's nutritional needs. And that's typically, so it's going to vary a bit. There are some people that'll go outside of that range. How can we kind of take this information to mothers who are wanting to induce and kind of talk to them about what to expect?
Yeah, I feel like setting expectations is pretty important. Where if someone's going in and say, producing any milk is fantastic. Every time that you bring baby to the breast, that's amazing. Or you're able to give breast milk from a bottle, that's amazing. And a success worth celebrating. I think that is one of my big takeaways in the 25 to 75%. But getting them involved in a breastfeeding group, or encouraging them to meet other people who are attempting to breastfeed and go through that together and just kind of get socialized in it, I think is going to be huge. And taking the pressure off is really what I was getting from this specific chapter of like a culture of relaxation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like just in our culture in general, there's so much pressure on moms to perform. Like, it's like a lot of women that's where you get like a lot of this perceived low milk supply, because it's like you're so hyper focused on what you think it should be, instead of having realistic expectations. And then just like that stress makes it even harder to produce milk, right? So being able to talk through, just more than likely you're not going to be able to feed your baby 100% breast milk if you're inducing lactation. Not that it's not possible, but realistically most won't.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was very interesting that at least mother's motivation is like the number one key to like how much milk gets produced. So if you can kind of read the family, like how much are they wanting this before you can and kind of manage expectations to that degree too. Like a mother that's like, I'm going to try, and not maybe doesn't want to spend like a ton of time on it. It's like, awesome, you're going to give your baby some milk probably, but like we're not going to try and push to get even maybe the 75% of meeting baby's needs with milk.
Right. And you find that with a lot of things just in life, right? The human mind is an amazing force of nature, and our will, when applied, is amazing. But also when it's not applied, then we lose that benefit.
Mhm.
But which is really interesting. I have seen in homes like this play out where you go in and mom is, kind of more comfortable using the formula and doesn't really necessarily want to go through. None of my families are, introducing lactation from nothing. They've all been pregnant. This is new for me. But speaking from that experience, which is going to be similar, it applies there as well because, breastfeeding is extremely easy for some people, but not for others.
Mhm.
I would say at the time, not at least in the establishing part.
Oh yeah, because we're still living in this culture where it's just not the norm. Some people who like grew up surrounded by breastfeeding women may have an easier time, not always. That like even if they grew up in the culture, if they're separated from that culture once they have the baby, that can make it even harder. Like having that present during the time that you are needing that support is very necessary for the most part. Then I highlighted a ton under it, like mother's health, because it's funny how much of this can be just applied in general, but particularly like under exercise, that and whenever I was talking about exercise, although you won't have much time as before baby, don't give up your hobbies and interests. Like it's that thing that people always say is like, enjoy the time while you have it, like while you're pregnant or before baby comes. And it's like, yeah, that's easy to say, but how do we like realistically do it? How can we talk to these mothers about like finding time to exercise, spend time with friends, and just enjoy themselves and relax before baby comes and once baby's here? What kind of we can try our best to do these things, but what kind of practical tips do you give to parents to try and make time for themselves?
So I actually don't really suggest doing that right away. I always say taking care of a baby isn't hard. It's taking care of a baby while trying to do anything else that's hard. If you're just turning everything else off and just taking like 3 to 5 days at minimum to just bond with baby, just hang out, recover yourself, and just be your own little family unit. People can drop food off in a cooler on the front porch. Don't entertain. Then you're going to have a much easier time getting through getting to know each other, learning how to communicate with your baby, establishing feeding, getting some sleep patterns established. Like that's just easier if that's all you're doing, right? We're not trying to do any other kind of upkeep. That's it. We're doing that. We're keeping our doctor's appointments. Done. And I know that that's kind of opposite of what they said, but that's what I have found for myself and for my clients. And there's all kinds of literature that supports that idea of rooming in. I've seen clients that room in for weeks after they give birth, and they get a little stir crazy there at the end most of the time. But it has a lot of positive effects. If you do that, then you're making your future time easier to where you can start investing in your own self again. Being able to understand your baby's cues is huge. if you know that your baby is hungry when they're just kind of mildly uncomfortable and we never get to the screaming phase, it's just easier, right? If your baby is making sounds that it's gassy and you misinterpret that as food because you haven't taken the time to learn what their needs are, and then you're putting milk on top of gas and making them even more uncomfortable, that's going to be a lot harder to take care of your baby than if you took the time to learn what they were saying. And then you can invest into yourself. You can put that baby in a ring sling and go hang out with your friends, right? Because they're comfortable and you're aware of them and you're able to take care of them in public without them scream crying and then you feel like you have to leave. But that's mine. And then setting expectations in pregnancy. Postpartum care plans are huge. Let people know if you don't want them to come over for a long time before you have the baby. And then you're not having to manage that. People don't get their feelings hurt. They're excited to come see you when it's available, and you have a lot more support. Support groups are great. That's where I go.
But it's like, I think it's always interesting because some people will say, like, you'll hear a lot of people say to like sleep while you have the chance, like during pregnancy, before the baby arrives. And like, I'm pretty sure somewhere in here it said something similar. It's like sleep while you have the chance. And it's like, that might be easier if you're not like pregnant. I don't know, but maybe you're way excited or anxious and sleep is still like hard to come by. That kind of, as much as we are like really genuine and might be saying it's like rest is important, it can be very irritating for parents to hear, especially when they're having problems getting that rest.
Yeah, they got some form of restless leg. They're constantly having to pee. Baby is dropped and they're like, hey, here's the thing. There's no such thing as getting comfortable enough to sleep right now, Yeah. Or they're trying to get their to-do list done before they have the baby. Like, I've got to make all these freezer meals and I have to set up the nursery and,
and if
I'm just trying to go through all these projects so when I come back to work, it's not a mess.
If you're trying to relactate, maybe you're at the pump 8 times a day right now. It's like, how am I supposed? I feel like I have to get up in the middle of the night to pump so I can make this milk. It's like, how do you fit it all in?
Right. And the book actually does suggest getting up in the middle of the night at least once. So there's sleep disruption.
Yeah. So that whole like sleep when you've got the chance. I mean, before baby arrives, you're not sleeping while the baby sleeps. You're just like taking lots of naps. Right. Maybe scheduling intentional time to nap, since you don't have that cue of, oh, the baby's asleep, I should be sleeping. If you're getting up once or twice during the middle of the night to pump, schedule time to nap. I also like highlighted and underlined this section on thirst because it says like drink to thirst, but not past it. It is a common misconception that the more a mother drinks, the more milk she will make. And like, oh my gosh, please stop telling moms to drink more water whenever their supply is low.
You see it everywhere. Every single like mom group that has someone asking, what should I do to up my supply? Are you drinking 5 gallons of water a day?
Do you feel like all that's going to do is make you have to pee a lot. So you'll really feel like you're pregnant, right?
Accurate.
So yeah, you shouldn't go getting yourself dehydrated because that's just not good on your body. Add stress, and that could like just like the stress on your body could cause a hard time, make it harder for you to produce milk. But like drinking tons and tons of water is just another thing, right? On top of all the things you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also found it really interesting. This is the first chapter where it talked about introducing birth control as a method of helping to lactate. And that is not something that had ever occurred to me previously. That was new.
Yeah, because like birth control pill is meant to kind of mimic pregnancy to hormonally and to keep you actually getting pregnant. So it can help with building that breast tissue before you really start trying to initiate the milk production. It talks about the like different stages in of inducing lactation. But I also really is happy that it pointed out that some of the some of the causes of infertility are going to also affect if they're able to produce much milk. So, I mean, like, if they are adopting a baby, it could be because they had problems with infertility. And so that's like, I mean, something to be aware of, that if you were having problems conceiving, you might have similar problems with inducing lactation. All part of that, setting expectations.
Yeah.
Also, and this is like really big for mothers that are giving birth to some degree. It says like for mothers inducing lactation, the amount of milk that they produce before the baby's actually there is not a good indication of how much milk they'll produce once the baby is actually there and nursing at the breast. Because the baby is way more efficient than any pump. So like, I mean, mothers who are pregnant, a lot of times they'll be like concerned about like whether or not they're leaking colostrum. What are like, am I going to produce enough milk? Like, what are these things that if I'm not leaking, if my breasts aren't a certain size, all these things. It's like, those are not the type of signs that you'd be looking for to determine what kind of milk supply you'd have once baby's there. And baby's going to be really, most babies should be able to remove milk more efficiently than a pump will. Sometimes there's oral restrictions and stuff that could inhibit. But a baby has good oral function is going to be better than a pump. And then once that milk's being removed efficiently, it's going to be it'll just ramp up that supply. And then how long it's going to take. So I thought that this was a good topic to like go over with moms expecting to lactate or to relactate. It talks a lot about how some might choose to start earlier than others. And you don't necessarily have to do any pre-work before baby arrives. So like being able to just, because adoption processes can be like really hard to predict when you'll actually have a baby. So what yeah, I guess what are the types of changes that you'd think would be really important to like or that what kind of what part of like the expectations like before baby arrives do you think would be really important to pass on to mothers that are inducing lactation?
I was really surprised at how long it said it would take. I don't know why I thought it would be faster. Yeah, so that was news to me. For some reason, I was like, oh, this could be done. Well, I know why I thought that. My sister worked in the NICU and they were teaching her how to induce lactation for someone. And they just like expressed on her and she shot milk out and she's never had a baby. So I was like, oh, this is a fast process. Nope. I have no idea how that happened. But they were like, oh, that's really surprising and just moved on. So she came home, told me how crazy that was, and I'm like, wow, you can induce lactation easily. No, apparently not. That was an assumption made. So I'm actually not completely sure about the expectations other than what it went over in the book because I have no personal experience with this. But I, would probably go over some of the stories that they talked about in here. Like moms that pumped 8 times a day and then were producing, a large amount by the time that baby came in, but that it took them a couple of months to do so. And then ones that were like, that's too much for me and I'm not going to be doing 8 times a day. And I would definitely talk about the stories of the moms who ended up not adopting the baby that they were preparing the milk specifically for. And kind of talk about, how would you like to handle this if this does end up coming up in the same way that we prepare for, if there's going to be like a NICU stay, even though we don't really expect one, or a C-section, even if we don't really expect that, because it's a possibility, setting up a plan and going over it and setting that expectation beforehand. But I would probably use like other people's stories from this book because I don't have any of my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like as far as like some of the like prep work done, I really liked some of the idea that like while you're doing this pre-work and collecting the milk, it's not just like, I mean, a lot of it is ramping up, trying to get to producing milk for when your baby arrives, but it also that stuff that you're pumping at this point could be just set aside to supplement your own milk later on too. So it's like, even if you don't get your supply up to where it's like they can get 100% of their nutrition at the breast, maybe if you've been doing this long enough beforehand, they could still get 100% of your breast milk just from like earlier on.
Yeah, I feel like that would be really motivating as well. And if the number one indicator is going to be mother's motivation, then that would be a pretty big central point that we would want to be making when talking with our clients, is just really trying to increase their motivation.
Yeah. Just like, especially like if they've, like if a adoption is like taking way longer than they expected, like, or if, or whatever the situation is, maybe they have a, if their adoption falls through and there might be, maybe there's still another baby that wants to use that milk. But yeah, it's just none of it is wasted work.
Right. Yeah, that would be really important to emphasize for sure.
Yeah. Sure. Is there anything else from chapter 9 that really stood out to you?
don't think so. I think everything else in here we'd gone over before.
I thought it was just like an interesting fact that like part of inducing lactation could alleviate menopausal symptoms. That was like fun information.
It makes sense. Yeah. It was actually kind of funny. I was on social media shortly after reading that, and someone was like, taking the birth control pill can make your menopause much easier. I was like,
all right. So chapter 10 is approaches to inducing lactation. So the nitty gritty, step by step.
What I've been waiting for. This is what I've wanted the whole time. This is why I like textbooks. I just want to get to it, you know?
You don't want the fluff?
I want the protocols. Chapter 10 is all the protocols.
Just outline it. All on a table. Don't even need all this text.
For real, though. The tables are great.
Yes, I absolutely think that as part, because it's way outside of a doula's role to prescribe these protocols, but like making a copy of them and being like, here, take this to your IBCLC or your care provider, and so you can talk through your options.
That's my jam.
Yeah.
That's all I do. I have so many things like that I just constantly hand out where I'm like, I just want you to know that this exists as an option.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah. So, goodness, this chapter, I mean, it talks about the three different, kind of like stages of preparing to produce milk. I mean, well, you prepare to produce milk, and then you start making milk before baby arrives, and then you make more milk after baby arrives. I think that it's really important to note that you do not have to do those first two steps necessarily. You can start after baby arrives if the thought of doing all that work before there's like for sure a baby in your arms is too stressful for you, then it's too stressful for you. You can skip it.
Yep.
So what are the types of things that you might talk to a mom about as she's making the decision for like which protocol she wants to use? What kind of things would you have her think about as far as her disposition or what's going on with her life in order to make some of these decisions?
Well, I feel like we would want to set up how much time she has, emphasizing that she's going to be more likely to be successful if she's not stressed out. So if pumping is stressful, then maybe the pumping protocol is not a good idea. But if pumping is exciting for her and something that she's able to do, she's got access to something that she can just stick in her bra and pump, or she doesn't mind being hooked up while she's typing at a computer or something, then, that might be the perfect one for her. Talking about the different, like the Newman Goldfarb protocols, probably butchered that, where it talks about like doing progesterone or goat ceru. Obviously, that's not going to be something that I can necessarily have a super intense conversation with her about, because that's completely outside of my scope. But what I could do is say, how comfortable do you feel about putting something in your body that might help with this? You've got a mom that's been going through a lot of fertility treatments. She's probably perfectly comfortable with that. And say, okay, you know, let's get you talking to somebody that can actually really go into that with you. And here's some resources to prep for that conversation. Or maybe she's been going through this treatment. She's like, man, I'm done messing with my body. You know, I don't want to add anything in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said before, when you were talking about, do you want to prep for baby? Because some of these protocols, when in step 1 and step 2, it says not applicable. Like, they don't expect you to start doing these things before baby arrives. And some of them, it's 3 or 4 months before baby arrives, start doing, you know, this step, then this step. So, you know, if that makes you feel more connected and excited for the fact that you're going through this adoption process, awesome. Let's give you something to do. Let's give you some prep work. If you don't want to do that, then let's look at one of the protocols that literally says that's not even one of the steps, you know?
Yeah, I just like, it kind of all goes back to mother's motivation too. It's like, where is she going to, like, where does she get her motivation for wanting this to begin with? Like, is it a way that they want to connect with baby? Is it like, is this process going to help them connect more? Is it like they just really, really believe in the benefits of breast milk? Maybe they want to start earlier to make sure that they are collecting milk prenatally, or not prenatally, before baby arrives, so that they have more milk, and like they're more likely to have their own milk to give to the baby. Or maybe all they want is that just connection at the breast. And then you're like, well, maybe we can approach this as a, if you make milk, great. If not, we just get a bunch of supplements and do at breast supplementation, and then like you'll get milk by the way.
Right.
Yeah, it's just really getting down to the root of what they're wanting out of inducing lactation could really help guide some of these decisions.
Yeah. And what I liked a lot of the things because I'm a protocol girl, but the page 152, where you literally have a chart for creating your own protocol, that's pretty cool, because, you know, going in and doing what is going to work for you is going to be ideal. Now, I do look at this and I think, okay, someone who's really excited could just go through and check every single one of these boxes and just overextend themselves, right? So I don't necessarily think that this might be something you should do by yourself.
Yeah, I think
to have realistic expectations set.
Highly recommend filling that out with an IBCLC.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think helping them match up their available time and like what they actually want to get out of it is probably an important part of that, because they want to have a full milk supply, but they don't, or as much as they can, but they don't actually have the time,
right,
or like mental energy to do that. Like making sure that like their expectations match the reality of what they can actually do.
Yeah, like maybe their job won't allow pumping breaks before they actually have a baby.
Right.
So maybe it's like they can't do some of these pumping protocols, or like they don't have access to a breast pump through their insurance prior to baby being born. Like, because a lot of them, you don't get reimbursed until after baby arrives. So maybe they can't get one. as the actual realities of logistics may be prohibitive to do a pumping protocol before baby's born.
Mm-hmm.